Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. This Thursday, it's a showdown in the Windy City when the Carolina Panthers take on the Chicago Bears. Tune in early for pregame coverage with TNF Tonight, live from Chicago. It's the Panthers and the Bears on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial and you can cancel at any time. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
It's football season, and now you can get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do they mean by almost? Can Uber Eats deliver foam fingers? No. But chicken fingers? Yes. Touchdown dances? No. Buttermilk ranches? Yes. Field goals? No. Grilling coals? Yes. There you have it. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, November 8th. We're back. It's Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
What it do?
What's up, boys? How are we feeling? We're halfway through the NFL season, which is kind of crazy to say.
I definitely explained that to my wife. I said, "Hey, we're halfway there." She goes, "Okay." You know, that still goes into January, but for her, it is like she's starting to see a little bit more of the holiday Kyle, and that version of Kyle, that version of all of us, I feel like is a pretty good version. I know, Jason, you're pretty pumped.
Oh, I mean, I am a holiday man. And, especially for when it comes and where we live. We live in Arizona. We do fantasy football for a living. So August, September, those months are crazy. Those are insane months for us, workload-wise, temperature-wise, nightmare in the desert-wise. So when October rolls around, when Halloween is in the air, and now it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, the weather's getting perfect and crisp. The workload is lightened. Everything is better in the holidays. It is my favorite time of year.
It's good time around these parts, especially for footballers, because, Jason, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if your body is ready, but tomorrow you will have recorded your 1500th episode of the Fantasy Footballers.
I am aware that is episode 1500, and now you have just let me in on a surprise. Clearly, you are aware that the producers are going to surprise us with a cake, because my body is always ready for cake.
No, that would
live
be
on
really,
the show.
Yeah,
we're just going to eat cake for the podcast audience.
That's all there is. No content, just cake.
Episode 1500 ASMR with the Ballers.
I feel like that would be like a live feed that people would, like, if it was a famous person just eating cake, people would watch that. People would want to be in on that. Now, Jason, I don't know if that really matters to our show that much, but we do have some good stuff. Okay, great stuff.
Yeah, I heard there's some cool surprises planned. I know one of them, which we talked about on the show. There's going to be the top 10 all-time nicknames revealed as voted on by the Foot Clan, and that's a fun list to go through.
Yeah, some of these names have been around for a while. Some of them we're still using Dynasty. So, Betz, do you have a personal favorite Ballers nickname over the years?
I mean, there's so many good ones, but when I was scrolling the list, putting my votes in, I just kept laughing at Blau Pow.
That's what I brought up today, too. That was like one of my all-time favorites.
It's such a simple one, and it's
Blah, blah.
not a huge play on words, but it just got me every time, so I immediately voted for that one.
Bilal Powell. Yeah, I can't even say his name because his name is blah blah.
Bilal Powell.
Yeah, and they still are coming. I mean, we made one this weekend with Brett ripping farts.
I mean, that immediately deserves, I feel like, consideration because of how good it is. It's just, he was ripping farts out there, that's for sure.
Well, he was so bad that the team went out and signed Carson Wentz. Are you kidding me? Brett ripped farts that hard that you go and sign Carson Wentz? Goodness.
I feel like his moment of the sun was so fast because we talked about it on Tuesday's show. You and Mike did. You talked about like, hey, maybe Carson Wentz, somebody, and then completely changed within like right after the episode. And then, I don't know, a year or two from now, we'll be like, who's Brett Rippin? Who is that guy?
You guys remember that guy we was talking about him ripping farts?
My favorite nickname, and the one that I'm shocked has had this much, it's just gone on for a long time, is Guns Mahoney. Because when Guns Mahoney made it to the show, that's Dan Campbell, he was the Dolphins interim head coach. And like, that was it. Next year wasn't the coach. And then he comes back, and obviously Dan Campbell's a big deal, big part of our life now. But Guns Mahoney's had a lot. We don't really call him that much or that anymore, really.
No, I gotta rekindle that fire.
Okay, so Jason, any other quick fun ones?
Oh, I mean, there really are just too many. When I read the list, I was like, do we do anything on the show other than just come up with player nicknames? Because this was like reading a novel. Guns Mahoney was absolutely one of my all-time favorites. Blau Pow. I mean, there's just too many to think of.
Yeah, you can go to Ballers Discord if you want to be in on that final vote. We will read off the top 10 on Thursday's episode. You can be a part of that. And then you can also go to jointhefoot.com if you want to be a part of our community. You want to be a part of the people. I was just in the Dynasty channels. I was just, perusing before the show, looking at our Dynasty Superflex channel, Dynasty Trade Advice. There's Dynasty Waivers. I mean, there's conversation going on all the time. So if you're a Dynasty manager, I could not imagine a better place to talk out your league with people that are super serious about it. They love it. And there's so many Dynasty leagues. Like, I think a lot of people have their home league. And then if you want to get in with people that are playing Dynasty all the time, like, this is the place to do it. So I just want to encourage you, jointhefoot.com if you want to be a part of that. But today's show, guys, it's a special one in itself. We've never really, this is our first year doing the Dynasty podcast. We've never really reviewed mid-season and looked back and said, okay, over the past 9 weeks, because we're halfway through, we haven't really come up with our own awards, our own flares. These aren't the footies, Jason. All right? This is not what we're doing. So on this show today, we are going to get to talk through some of these mid-season Dynasty awards. Each of the three of us will get to share some of our thoughts. And if you have your own, you can share those with us on Twitter and on X. So let's do it.
Dig deeper, y'all. Let's go!
All right. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight a couple of different categories that pertain to Dynasty. And a lot of these are going to have overlap with your home leagues, whatever else you're in. But in Dynasty, we get to kind of put a certain lens of perspective of how we're looking at players. So the first category is going to throw us back because each one of these categories has a presenter of somebody that in my past, maybe in your Dynasty past, has fit this category. So the first category is Dynasty Golden Nugget of the first half. And this is presented by Philip Lindsay. This is a positional player that either you got off waivers or the end of your bench that became a superstar. And didn't Philip Lindsay have like a 2-year run where he was awesome?
Oh, yeah. He was incredible, undrafted free agent out of nowhere, had a quick hype train. Every Dynasty league, someone got lucky enough to pick him up. I believe he was a top 12 running back in his rookie season, was good in his sophomore season, and he went the route of James Robinson, which is when you don't have a lot of draft capital behind you, no matter how good you are, because James Robinson fits this bill too, where he was signed off of waivers. He helped people win a league for a year and a half, and then poof, there's no commitment to you. Philip Lindsay was a great pick.
Yeah, Betz, I'm going to let you go first because I think all three of us are totally shocked that part of the narrative of the 2023 season would be this player dominating. I mean, I'm really dominating for fantasy for half the season.
Yeah, until last week. This player was the first half player. And I feel like, the definition of the award is the first half. It's so wild that this guy could go from being the RB4 currently in half PPR to borderline irrelevant, depending on what the Colts do, and that is Zach Moss, because he has been not just like, oh, you plug him in and you just hope you're getting like RB2 numbers to get by. He's been awesome. He's been like a true difference maker in your league. But last week, we finally saw the switch where they really did unleash Jonathan Taylor. 45 snaps for JT, 13 snaps for Zach Moss, just completely phased out. But man, he's been so good. And remember, he missed week 1 because he fractured, I think it was his forearm in training camp. 4th in the league in rushing yards per game, 8th in yards per carry, 8th in total touches. He's been a true workhorse, but now we're on to the second half of the season, and I don't know if that continues. I mean, obviously it's not continuing, but I don't know if he's even part of the game plan anymore with how they, paid Jonathan Taylor and then used him last week. So first half of the year, Zach Moss was awesome.
Yeah, so for dynasty purposes, what is Zach Moss now going forward? If you've got him in a league, or if you're thinking about, should I go get him? Does Zach Moss hold dynasty value right now?
I feel like people are smart. Like, one, our listeners, we know they're smart, but most people are able to sniff out like, okay, they gave a contract to Jonathan Taylor. This can't keep up. And I just can't see people saying, I want to trade for, maybe 3 weeks ago, you could have said I was going to trade for Zach Moss 4 weeks ago. I just can't see anyone saying I need to bolster myself for a stretch run and trade for him. I mean,
I think that means that the Jonathan Taylor manager at this point this week is the manager that should go and acquire Zach Moss. If that wasn't already you in your league, if you've got Jonathan Taylor and it looks like, okay, I've got my dude back, go get, trade very little for Zach Moss. And if the opposing manager is not willing to give him up for very, very little, then just wait a couple weeks. Because, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, when it becomes kind of probably clear that he is just an insurance option for a Jonathan Taylor injury, then they'll take something as opposed to having nothing right before your trade deadline.
So if you were the Jonathan Taylor manager and you wanted to get insurance, would you give up a late second, just like on the stretch run?
A late second, yeah. If I'm a really, really good team, I think a late second would be fine. Any team, I would be willing to give up a third. If I'm middle of the pack, or I've got Jonathan Taylor and I wasn't starting Zach Moss and I've got a really bad record right now, I would not give up an early second for Zach Moss as just an insurance back.
Yeah, that's probably true. Jason, your name that you have here is probably the biggest revelation, at least for the first month of the season, and the dynasty value that you now have with this player.
Yeah, for dynasty leagues, this guy just stood out to me as the clear winner of this award, because in both of my main dynasty leagues, the ones that I play amongst the ballers, this player was not drafted in the first 3 rounds. This was a waiver wire ad right afterwards, and he was considered in those areas. He was a 3rd rounder in plenty of leagues, but it's Puka, baby. Puka Nacua came from relatively out of nowhere. I mean, we talked about him pre-NFL draft. We talked about him in the startup draft, the rookie draft season, but he was a dart throw. He was not a locked and loaded superstar stud. And when you can find a guy on dynasty waivers after your rookie draft who turns out to maybe be the number 1 best rookie of that season, like it's potentially true that for fantasy football, we could look back 5 years, 10 years from now and say, it wasn't JSN, it wasn't Jordan Addison, it wasn't Bijan, it was Puka. That's not outlandish to think that anymore. I would still have Bijan number 1. But, I mean, since 2014, here are the rookies with 2.25 yards per route run or greater. Odell Beckham, superstar. A.J. Brown, superstar. Justin Jefferson, superstar. Puka Nacua, currently doing it. Jamar Chase, superstar. Chris Olave will be a superstar. And Tyreek Hill, superstar. Like, he is – and it's not on a small amount of routes. This isn't like, his yards per route run are really good when they bring him in limited and throw it to him. He's also leading in targets. He's just always down the field, open, catching balls. He's a very talented wide receiver, and Sean McVay is going to get the most out of him. So he's my golden nugget especially for dynasty purposes, because in dynasty leagues, there's no more important position to me than wide receiver. Wide receiver has the lifespan, the longevity. These young superstars can stay for a while and stay healthier and actually get additional contracts. And so if you can find one of those type of players on waivers, I remember back in the day in our main Dynasty League, Tyreek Hill was a waiver. It was like, I don't remember if it was after the season started or just between the rookie draft and the start of the season, but he was picked up off of waivers. And if you can add Tyreek Hill or Puka Nacua or one of these type of players off of waivers, then you won the GM of the year.
Now, who has him in your main Dynasty League? I'm very curious about that.
I do not know. And I will never know. I will not look it up.
No, it'll be Jeremy and I, because we have him. And
I know the answer.
We got him early on. Feel good about that. Okay, so let me predict his stat line, because I was going through his numbers, and Jason mentioned those yards per out run numbers. His target share, guys, is still at 32%, which is just stupid.
Insane.
Stupid. So he's at 91 targets right now. He has 827 receiving yards.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Puka
91.
is at 91 targets right now?
Yes.
He had those
What
games
a
early on where he had
freak.
like 15 in one game and then like 12 in another. Yeah, he was just piling up double-digit targets weekly.
What does he finish with? What's his stat line he finished with? That's my question.
Who's his quarterback? That's going to make
Carson Wentz,
a pretty
baby.
pretty big difference.
Like, is he going to finish with 150 plus targets? It seems like that's like.
Yeah, I think so. We're at the halfway point. He's at 91. I think 150 targets will be a pretty easy line to hit.
Yeah, I think that's pretty doable. They're probably going to be underdogs too in a decent number of their contests coming up, so they should be thrown.
Yeah, you saw this past week, him and Cup both got 7 targets, and if you want to call them targets, because in that game, I don't know, like I felt so sad for Cooper Kupp that entire game, because it just felt like they were trying to run plays, and Brett Rippon's like, I just don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can throw it to you guys. So, Puka Nacua, I think, is the best answer here. I want to throw out Taysom Hill, because over the last month, if you have him on your squad, you're probably like, I don't know if I'll get to play Taysom. I have other options. Guys, he's getting the red zone rush attempts of an RB1, and now he's running routes like an actual tight end. 100 routes over the last month. He has more receptions over the last month than George Kittle. So when you get somebody who has that type of usage inside the 10 and is running routes, that should be a running back. And we used to say, oh, you're getting a quarterback in the tight end spot. Like, yeah, he's throwing some passes. You're getting a full running back right now in the tight end spot, and the Saints are 18-1 when he gets 7+ rush attempts. So guys, Taysom Hill, rest of season, how high is he in terms of tight end?
I think he's
rankings?
I think he's a top 6 tight end the rest of the way. The way that the change that has been made where they are using him running routes, using him as a tight end, using him as a running back, using him as a quarterback. He's playing about 50% of the snaps now, which is not what he has usually done as just the gadget guy. I think he should be, easily top 8, but you've got to be to be actually relevant at tight end in fantasy. You pretty much need to be like 5 or better. I remember there was one year I was Trey Boo Boo. I really liked his outlook. Really talked him up, and he came out, and that following year he sucked. Huge disappointment. Wasn't good. Finished that year as the tight end 7. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, wait. He was the tight end 7. He was pretty good, but no, it was like the tight end 7 usually sucks. It's just like these are guys that let you down most weeks. There's only like 1 or 2, at most 5 tight ends that are like weekly locked in starters. So hopefully Taysom can get into that top 5.
I think he will too, especially when you consider, Josh Dobbs is apparently the best quarterback in the NFL, but you lose Kirk Cousins with Hawkinson, Darren Waller's on IR and their season's over. Like, yeah, I think he's a top 5 guy.
Yeah, Goddard's, out for at least the next 4 weeks. So it's very few and far between. Would you rather have rest of season this year, Taysom Hill or George Kittle as your tight end?
Oh, Taysom Hill. I find myself so anti-George Kittle. I can't stand the ebbs and flows. I say this all the time on the main show, but like, he's awesome. George Kittle is awesome. If he was a Chief, he would be Travis Kelce. He could do anything. They just don't ask him to do what fantasy managers want him to do on a regular basis. The games they ask him to do it, he does it. He's great, but you got to take into account the system. So yeah, I think you'll have more consistency and a higher floor with Taysom.
That's just like crazy to even consider, but I think it's right. And yeah, you mentioned it. Debo's been out for 2 weeks, 7 and 11 targets for George Kittle. Debo's coming back this week most likely. And in the games prior, 2 for 1 target for George Kittle. So that's kind of the story, but it makes sense.
It's one of the wilder things about the Dynasty format that these players we just talked about, none of us were excited going into the season about the prospects of Zach Moss. Not even Zach Moss's family was excited. Puka. I mean, we talked about Puka on this show. We mentioned him, as somebody like after your draft you could pick up. And then Taysom is just a wild card. But these are players that have meant a lot in Dynasty. And then the other name I'll just throw out as just an honorary mention, Kyron Williams has gone from, hey, you're like backup, who cares, to holy crap, you are an asset to my team, and he's coming back very soon. So he's another name. Rashid Shaheed, another one that's just like, oh, you're actually pretty relevant to the conversation. So those are our ones for Dynasty Golden Nugget of the first half. Let's take a break, and we'll get to our next one.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. This Thursday, it's a showdown in the Windy City when the Carolina Panthers take on the Chicago Bears. Tune in early for pregame coverage with TNF Tonight, live from Chicago. It's the Panthers and the Bears on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
You need a vehicle that can meet your family's needs, and Toyota has you covered. Introducing the first ever Grand Highlander, a midsize SUV with the ideal combination of space, performance, style, and advanced tech. The roomy Grand Highlander never makes you choose between passengers and cargo. You can fit both with ease. With 3 spacious rows and available seating for up to 8, and legroom that makes even long trips comfortable. With Grand Highlander's available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain unlimited and platinum trims, you can be confident you have the power, acceleration, and efficiency needed for almost any adventure your family can cook up. And you'll get where you're going in style with a modern, spacious cabin that's perfect for both playdates and date nights. Impressive tech upgrades take the new Grand Highlander to the next level, including a standard digital key, an available panoramic view mirror, and a 12.3-inch multimedia touchscreen. Don't just live life grander in the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander.
Okay, we're here, and a lot of times with Dynasty, we're talking about youngins, the youth, the kids, the cool kids, and we're projecting, we're thinking about potential, thinking about who somebody can be over time. This next category is the most disappointing youngin. That's how we say it in the South. And so we're looking at players, years 1 through 3, that have been the most disappointing player in Dynasty. And this award is presented by none other than N'Keal Harry, the great wide receiver I once took at the 102 in Dino Jr.
He fell to you, huh? I mean, he was the 101 in that year in most leagues I was in.
Yeah, apparently somebody wanted to take Josh Jacobs. And
what an idiot.
I know. And so I was like, sweet, wide receivers, youth, Dynasty, of course. So some honorary mentions before we get to ours. I feel like Kyle Pitts is still in this category and has been for at least the last 2 years.
For sure. Kadarius Toney is someone that really, I mean, he should be presenting this award.
He would not make it up here. He doesn't run enough routes. He's not as involved. Dude would get hurt, wouldn't make it. I put Rondale Moore, but I felt like it was mean. Like it was really mean just to throw him up there, but like, what a waste of a pick. Sorry, Jason.
No, it was a total waste of a pick. I mean, if we're just going waste of a picks, then you could just take pretty much all the Cardinals picks. Who was Andy Isabella? That was a total waste. At least Rondale Moore's still playing football for the Cardinals.
When you get a chance to take Andy Isabella over DK, you do it.
Oh, that's right. We did take him over DK Metcalf. Great job, Steve Keim.
So, Betz, I will let you go first. And this was actually, I think all three of us are going to.
This is the best answer.
Amen it.
I don't think it's going to happen. for Jameson Williams. Like, and it's time. Like, if it doesn't happen in the next month, I feel like it's never going to happen. You know, how many times we're going to do this with Jameson where it's like, okay, he's coming back. And it's like, yeah, but they're kind of telling us that they don't really want him to be what we think he could be. And if you look at his route rate, 50% to 19%, 45, 34% since he's come back into the lineup. And, you know, coming out of college, we knew the ACL was going to affect his rookie season, but then he gets suspended. Then he picks up the training camp hamstring injury. And it's just like, man, you need to do something in the NFL to ever be a dynasty asset. And I don't think there was anything more telling than at the trade deadline. Now, part of this probably is the Marvin Jones situation, but they trade for a downfield separator in Donovan Peoples-Jones. I feel like if they thought Jameson Williams could do it, they would not have made this move. However, they swap a late round pick, go get DPJ. And I think Jameson Williams is just going to continue to be this like part-time, you know, 2 targets a game, hope they hit, and nothing more at this point. Now, I know Kyle also put this out on Twitter. You mentioned some of the coach speak from Ben Johnson, like over the last 2-3 months. If you just, I wish I could find that post, but if you just go to it and kind of read like chronologically or in order, like by week, they're all sort of saying the same thing. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, you know, we want him to do more. We think he can do more, you know, stuff like that. But like, he just doesn't do it. And they haven't let him do it. So I don't think it's going to happen.
They say worse than just, I want him to do more. It's, we have to be able to trust him. He's not there yet. He's coming along slower than we hoped. It's all bad. And to go back 2 years when he was a rookie, Kyle had some kind of inside information from a source that was wondering about Jameson Williams. Would it be fair to say it was his work ethic that was being questioned? Okay, so, and then when you've got that question, that always lingers in the back of my mind that you kind of brought that up. We never brought it up on the show because it didn't feel like a reliable enough source to put that out for a rookie coming in who we all thought was extremely talented. But when you combine it with the fact that the team does not seem to love this dude. You know, that's talking, you know, if you don't block, you don't get the rock. And when you got to keep saying stuff like this 2 years into this guy's career, it just feels like that report that we got early on might be true. And I agree, Betz. He's got like a month left to prove he can step forward, or he's just probably going to be like N'Keal Harry. He'll be in the NFL for more years than you think, doing nothing.
Do you guys think you could still get, I mean, I feel like an early second. If you have Williams and you're like, man, I'm worried, which we are, do you think you could still get an early second? Could you get better than an early second round rookie pick for Jameson Williams?
You might be able to get a late round first from someone who believed strongly in the talent, of which there are many. He's on a good offense. He's young. You can make excuses for why it hasn't happened. The lost season, the suspension. You know, you know, like I don't put it a 0% chance that he doesn't develop into a star. I don't think it's going to happen. But like there's the case. So if you could get a first, I would trade him for a first in a heartbeat.
Same.
I wonder if the second's enticing if you just think there's nothing here. But I almost just think it's just worth it for the 5 to 10% chance that he's that he's not John Ross. Like that's what I'm basically hoping that he's not. But these quotes, these are, you know, Betz and Jason were talking about. This was in October. This isn't like, hey, this is a while ago. In October this year, we haven't been able to stack good weeks on top of each other with Jameson Williams. Some guys take longer than others. We frankly aren't there yet. Like that's not stuff that you would say publicly, but he did. Mm-hmm. So it's worrisome. A player that we really liked coming out of Alabama, really fun tape at Alabama, by the way. And it just hasn't translated. And you know, you kind of give a 2-year marker. We've talked about this on many shows, like where you're saying, okay, maybe you got a limited number of snaps. He had that one catch last year. We need to give him a little bit more room. The fact that he's not getting on the field, just pure snaps, it's not going to happen. Same thing with Kadarius Toney. Like, I just need somebody who, I don't know, actually plays football. So he's probably the most disappointing player in Dynasty, period, right now. Like, if I have him, yeah, if you can get something, but I also just like, I just might just go down with the ship and just say, I screwed this over. Because people are taking him at the 105, 106.
Oh yeah, he was super high. I'm going to go next here, Kyle, because when I came to the doc, there were two names that I wanted to put in. I wanted to put in Jameson Williams, and I wanted to put in the player you have, who has been an unmitigated disaster of a disappointment that I can't even really wrap my head around. And so I'll let you bookend with that. My player is Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce, I feel like we are watching his career evaporate as quickly as it came upon us. And if you go to this last offseason, I was so annoyed. I know, Kyle, you've been kind of anti-Dameon Pierce from the beginning. This offseason, I was super anti-Dameon Pierce right until the preseason looked like, the preseason was like, oh my gosh, is he really going to be the workhorse? Is he going to be in on all passing downs? And the thing is, he's not that good. You look at some of the metrics about like success rate and tackles for loss and things like this. I know their offensive line is not good. Somehow C.J. Stroud is not affected by that, but Dameon Pierce has not been very good in any phase of the game. There is a lot of historicity to the fact that a fourth-round draft capital running back almost always vanishes. I don't have the numbers in front of me because it was early off season, but I did a big study on that, and it was like 83% of the top of the guys who performed well in their rookie season as a fourth rounder almost disappeared. They lost like 47 fantasy points off their rookie season. Almost all of them vanished. And so when you combine that with some of the stuff that the coaches are saying, they're talking about how like, yeah, it's going to be a committee. Also, we can't run the ball. D'Amico Ryans was just talking about like, I watched his presser this last weekend, and he said, yeah, we're not able to run the ball, but thankfully we have a quarterback that can stand in there and throw it. And if that's our strength, then we'll just start playing to our strengths. He's basically saying like, look, we can't run the ball. We're not going to be able to run the ball. C.J. Stroud could throw it. That's what we're going to do now. And that doesn't, for dynasty purposes, if I'm the coach saying that says, hey, we need to fix this running game in the offseason. And how we're going to fix this running game, sure, it might be some offensive linemen, but I do not believe Dameon Pierce is the answer to our problem. I think he is part of the problem. And so they're going to go out and they're going to replace Dameon Pierce because they're not invested to him. He's a fourth-round draft pick. They don't have any big finances or draft capital in the running back room, and they can't run the ball. And so I expect this offseason they're going to invest in the running game, and it will be at the expense of Dameon Pierce. So his career, I mean, right now it looks like he's in the 50-50 timeshare of a team that can't run the ball. And then he might be replaced in the offseason. If I could get something for Dameon Pierce, I would.
Yeah, the offensive coordinator of the Texans, Bobby Slowick, comes from the 49ers, tree. And basically, they morph their game plan based on the opponent. You saw that against Carolina. Weak run defense, they said, hey, we're going to run the ball. Didn't work. They lost because they're just not effective doing it. This past week, they said, hey, let's throw the ball against Tampa Bay with our best player. And what did we get? The best rookie performance ever. It's one of those things where you can keep trying, but a committee approach is what the 49ers were always doing with all of their running backs, and you're seeing that now with the Texans. So it's sad. Like, it wouldn't shock me if Dameon Pierce, 2 or 3 years from now, he's on another team, he's a backup, and he has a little run as like a, just like a veteran on a good team. Like, let's say he went to the Ravens or something for a second contract. You'd be like, okay, this player can work. This is fine, but he's not going to get a big contract. And whatever value you thought you had, like, I think he was kind of seen as like a top 15 dynasty running back.
Oh, he definitely was. This offseason, he was being treated borderline top 12. I mean, he was for sure in the top 15. I'm going to see if I can find some old dated rankings.
What's funny is I had a moment where I was kind of like Jason. I've been pretty anti from the get-go, but the workload is really hard to argue with. It's kind of like we're seeing that with Rachaad White. This team stinks, but you're seeing the good side of somebody getting a ton of workload, and he's fine for fantasy. He's a top 15 running back. I think Dameon Pierce, you're seeing the other side of lack of draft capital. They can't run the ball. So whatever opportunities you project, same thing with Miles Sanders, who we're going to talk about later. If they're on a bad team, I don't care what workload you get. It might just be bad, just terrible for fantasy. So I don't know. Dameon Pierce is somebody that we're not going to tell anybody to trade for him. And if you have him, you just kind of hold, right?
No, if I have him, I'm trading him away. I'm trying to get something for him.
People want Dameon Pierce right now?
I think people want a 23-year-old running back that they believed in this offseason and has struggled.
What's the lowest you would take for him, though, like in rookie picks, Jason?
In a rookie pick, I would take any second for him.
Okay.
That's fair. I would too. There was also some warning signs. Like, I don't know how real this was, but they were kind of linked to Bijan in the pre-draft NFL draft process a little bit. And remember, you mentioned like they're just not invested in him from a draft capital standpoint. It's also not this coaching staff's guy, so they've got like double incentive to move on. So I think a second is totally fair.
I need to talk about Rashad Bateman because I don't know if I've really processed, a lot of us haven't processed the trauma of our life, but Rashad Bateman's one of those players that if you took him in a rookie draft in 2021, you're looking up now 3 years later and saying, what is this? Because I feel like you haven't gotten a full season ever. So 12 games, 6 games, and this year he's played in 8. And he just never really got going ever. He had a little stint the beginning of last year where he caught a couple touchdowns, but he's dealt with injuries, and his targets per route run last year was like enough. It was 23% in his, 6 games played that you're like, okay, maybe there's something there. He's running behind
per route run.
Yeah, it was good. And now he's running behind Nelson Aguilar, who they just picked up on the cheap. Like, what do they even care about him? Does he just not fit their system, I guess? But Rashad Bateman is a player that it's not going to happen. It's really not. And you need to be okay with that.
I think it mirrors Jameson Williams in one major way. The team can move on without you. The Baltimore Ravens are great, and the Detroit Lions offense is great. And they are not in need of Jameson Williams or Rashad Bateman.
That's a great point.
They waited for a while, and they have found out, like, okay, we gave you a chance. You didn't get it done. Their job is to go win games. Their job isn't to just sit there and try to be like, well, Rashad Bateman was a high draft pick. We should try to train him up and get him more involved. The season is moving on without you. Josh Reynolds is out there, Jameson Williams. He's blocking and he's catching balls, and we don't need you to be anything better. We're winning ball games, and that's kind of what it seems like with Rashad Bateman. They've just moved forward, and eventually you run out of patience for a player. Both these guys dealt with massive injuries several times, multiple years in a row, and you just have to move forward. You have to go, well, we can't rely on them, and if you can't rely on them, let me find any other player that's reliable.
Yeah. Betz, you have any thoughts on Bateman? Because I feel like there was a time where we were interested. I remember some of our articles coming out on our site. It's like, okay, well, coming out of Minnesota, like he profiled great. You have the capital, and I just haven't seen anything in any format that you could say I liked what I see.
No, I'm with you guys. It's bleak. It's bleak out there for Rashad Bateman. I love yards per route run. It's an awesome stat, but it is one that can be so, like, if you just get stuck to it across a small sample, you will get fooled. And if you just looked at last year, you'd be like, oh man, Rashad Bateman, 2.38 yards per route run. Like, this guy's going to be a stud. Second year leap, we saw it, but it was all just those like deep shots that happened at the beginning of the year that were unsustainable. Now we're seeing across a larger sample. As you mentioned, he's part of that wide receiver committee. He's at best the wide receiver 4 behind Odell, or fourth pass catcher behind Odell, Mark Andrews, and Zay Flowers. And it's like, man, if you can't be a top 2 option for a elite rushing quarterback in fantasy, it's never going to happen. So, yeah, I think it's slowly coming to an end here for Rashad Bateman's outlook.
I realized that was a really sad segment where we basically said, this guy's done. He's done. Get him off your team. But that's just part
also, can I just say real quick before we move on, I put this out on Twitter just to see what the poll would look like. I said, Dynasty, would you rather have Jameson Williams or a late 2024 first? It's only up to 300 votes right now, but 93% of people voted for the late 2024 first. So if you can trade Jameson Williams for a late first, do it immediately.
That would be quite nice. This next award is called the Mr. Magoo Fantasy Quarterback Award. It's presented by Blake Bortles. It is the quarterback in Dynasty that you did not see becoming a stalwart for your team. Maybe they're your quarterback 2. Maybe they're in a super flex league and you're like, wow, I'm I'm starting this guy and it's actually working out. So a big surprise that just you're stumbled into a quarterback for Dynasty that you're like, wow, did not know that I had them. So Jason, I will let you start first.
Yeah, I mean, I think CJ Stroud deserves this award, but we all, there were plenty of us that just really loved CJ Stroud before the draft, and obviously he didn't come out of nowhere. So I'm going to dig a little deeper, and I'm going to go with the Manders quarterback, Sam Howell. Howell! He has been very good for fantasy purposes. He runs the ball. He's getting better recently. He was the quarterback 1 a couple weeks ago, a top 10 quarterback this week. In fact, 4 of the last 5 games, he's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. And that is a player that, even though he fell to the 5th round in the NFL draft, which was really, really disappointing, this was a guy that I was targeting among all the rookie quarterbacks last year. I was like, I really liked Sam Howell. I thought he was good. Then he fell to the 5th round and was like, never mind. I guess, I'll scoop him up maybe at the end of a draft or something. But he became unimportant. This year, he has played well enough, and I think a big part of that is, we're talking about the realities of NFL franchises that can easily move on from a player, or they're not going to necessarily train you up. He's in a perfect position here with a team that is building for the future and that thinks they have found their guy. They are not going to be bad enough as a team to have some top 5 pick where they're going to be forced to stare down, do we want to keep going with Sam Howell, or do we want to take a shot at a really top-tier franchise type of prospect, which means Sam Howell's going to probably get another year to try to prove this. And the team has rallied around him. They love his attitude. There was the game against Buffalo where he was so unbelievably bad that you couldn't believe he didn't get benched. You couldn't believe that Riverboat Ron didn't bench him after that going into week 4. And he has bounced back from that game. He's been really good from that point forward. And, you look at some of the comments from the team. You've got Jonathan Allen, their defensive lineman, stalwart Mander. He is, one of the primary Manders. He came out and he said, people were asking him about Sam Howell. He said, Sam Howell's established himself as the franchise quarterback in Washington for 5 or 10 years. That's his belief. He came out and said, this is our franchise quarterback. We finally have one. The team super believes in this kid, and he looks pretty good. And so for fantasy purposes, he runs the ball. He's got good weapons. He's got now a bad defense. I think he is the guy you didn't necessarily expect to be a plug-and-play capable fantasy asset, but he certainly is. I mean, right now, do you know where he is quarterback ranking on the season?
Total points?
In 4-point scoring? Yeah.
So I'm assuming he's definitely top 10. I'm assuming he's like 7?
He's 6. He's the quarterback 6 in fantasy right now, halfway through the 2023 season.
Nice. And he kills the Eagles.
That's true. 2 good games against the Eagles. But 23 years old, you take it.
Yeah, and they're going to be bad on defense. So he's going to have tons of opportunities. And he's super fun. Like, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, it would be awesome if you had him in your QB2. Betz, go next.
Betz has the Sam Howell lookalike.
Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, who was basically laughed out of the league last year by multiple teams when he went from Carolina to the Rams and just kind of hopped around this offseason. You thought, well, okay, they signed Baker. Who cares? Like, the Bucs are going to be terrible. Who cares?
Oh, it was going to be Trask. It was Baker or Trask. True. It's probably going to be Kyle Trask as their starter. That's what we thought going into camp.
I forgot about that. Yeah. But man,
Jason wants Trask. Still does.
I don't know that Baker will continue to play this well, but if you had him on your bench as like a QB3, you literally thought you had nothing. And the dude is the quarterback 16 in total scoring here. And over the last 5 games, he has 4 top 12 finishes, QB1 performances, ahead of Trevor Lawrence. And look, Joe Burrow was injured earlier in the year, but ahead of Trevor Lawrence, ahead of Joe Burrow. Like, he's kind of a rock solid quarterback too right now, which is crazy. His weapons are good, obviously, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Cade Otton can catch the ball a little bit. Rachaad White can catch the ball a little bit. I think they'll be trailing enough that, like, he still might give you some middle QB2 numbers rest of season. So Baker Mayfield went from being a guy that I just like wanted no part of, and I don't think anyone did. And now you're like, okay, I could put this guy in my lineup as a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues.
And he actually passes the eyeball test a little bit. He looks pretty good, and his pocket awareness and movement has been. I don't know what happened after rookie year Baker. What happened above the shoulders to make him so scared, but under pressure he just looked so bad. And now this year, when pressure comes, he's evaded it. He's stepped out, kept his eyes downfield, and made a good throw.
Yeah, Freddie Kitchens killed him, did something to him in his psyche at that second year. But it's a great answer because I think he's one of those players that I definitely did not want any part of, and he's sustained multiple weapons in that offense. I'm going to throw out Josh Dobbs because not only was he probably sitting
American hero.
Apparently he's a hometown guy here. He's actually from the city next door where I'm from, Alpharetta, Georgia. Got to give a Georgia shout out, people. And man, he was sitting on waiver wires. Nobody was going to. When the Cardinals traded for him, Jason, I laughed. I laughed my head off. I said, why would they give up draft picks for a player that should be on the street? And it's worked out. So
yeah, when they made that trade, I had the same thought. I mean, granted, he led them to a 1-7 victory, so I still feel like, man, maybe we didn't need to trade that draft capital for that one win. But Josh Dobbs has looked pretty good, and instead of just throwing to Hollywood and nobody, now as the Vikings quarterback the rest of the way, he's got Hawkinson and Addison, and then eventually Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne. He's got some options, some weapons, and he's mobile. He runs. For fantasy purposes, he's going to come out of nowhere, and he should be a streaming option.
Yeah, 4 finishes inside the top 8. That's as many as Mahomes and more than Tua. So, yeah, running really matters for fantasy, and he's just come out of nowhere and magooed his way. The next award is the Running Back Houdini Award, and this one's presented by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's the running back whose value completely evaporated and is gone forever. We won't mention Dameon Pierce because we talked about him earlier. But Betz, you have somebody that it's just sad. It's one of the sadder stories in Dynasty of Najee Harris being, I don't even know what he is anymore.
That's the thing is I don't know either. I don't think anyone does. But he certainly is not what he was when he entered the NFL or after his rookie season when he was considered top 10, top 5 fantasy running back, locked and loaded in Dynasty. His snaps over the last 3 years have gone from 84% to 66% to now 54%. And his opportunities have fallen off a cliff, 24 to 19 to 15 per game over the last 3 seasons as Jalen Warren continues to look better. Now, I think he'll still hold a little value just because we have the 5th-year option thing going and he's only still in that rookie deal. But is this a guy that's going to sustain any sort of value beyond the first contract? I would be absolutely shocked. So it's sad for him. It's sad for Najee. I just don't even know what you can get for him anymore. I've had leagues where I don't have him, but someone else does, and they've put him on the block, and just no one cares. No one wants Najee anymore, which is just crazy for a former first-round NFL draft pick.
Yeah, you're not getting anything for him other than what he provides in your lineup as a flex option, as a weekly, bye-week start. I think we just have hopes that what happened last year will happen again. Last year he got off to a really stinky start, and the second half of the year he was actually pretty good. We blamed the foot injury. Maybe it wasn't the foot injury. But you hope that this team, as it gets into the cold weather and defenses start getting a little tired and beat up, that this style of player, just like we talk about Derrick Henry, the Yeti, he can get better and wear people down with his 240-pound frame as the season wears on. It might be surprising to realize 2 of the last 3 weeks he's been a top 12 running back because he never looks good. But he can, but I do agree with you. You got 1 year left. I don't think they're going to play around with a 5th-year option. They're not picking up a 5th-year option for Najee. I'd be really, really surprised. And then in the free agent market, I mean, oh man, I feel so bad. Genuinely feel bad for free agent running backs. You are the ugly girl at the dance, man. No, nobody's going to come ask you. I'm sorry, it sucks, but no one's coming over here to ask you to dance, and no one's going to be like, hey, Najee, I want you on my team for a lot of millions of dollars. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, he'll sign somewhere for a backup nonsense thing. But given how he's looked for 2 years, it's not looking promising.
And if you're not as attractive, you're at a dance, like there's still a snack bar. You can get a little something. You're still hanging out with people. You're at the dance, but
how was the dance, honey? Not bad. I got a soft pretzel tonight, but no one talked to me.
No one hung out with me. No one wants me. Even though apparently Najee was a really good looking one for a while. Like people like middle school, like, ooh, that's a good looking one, but not anymore. Not anymore. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. This Thursday, it's a showdown in the Windy City when the Carolina Panthers take on the Chicago Bears. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. Live from Chicago, it's the Panthers and the Bears on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
You need a vehicle that can meet your family's needs, and Toyota has you covered. Introducing the first ever Grand Highlander, a midsize SUV with the ideal combination of space, performance, style, and advanced tech. The roomy Grand Highlander never makes you choose between passengers and cargo. You can fit both with ease. With 3 spacious rows and available seating for up to 8, and legroom that makes even long trips comfortable. With Grand Highlander's available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain unlimited and platinum trims, you can be confident you have the power, acceleration, and efficiency needed for almost any adventure your family can cook up. And you'll get where you're going in style with a modern, spacious cabin that's perfect for both playdates and date nights. Impressive tech upgrades take the new Grand Highlander to the next level, including a standard digital key, an available panoramic view mirror, and a 12.3-inch multimedia touchscreen. Don't just live life grander in the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander.
Okay, we're going to blitz through a couple more names. I have Miles Sanders on here as a running back that just vanished. That the Panthers said, I want to pay you some money so that you can just chill. You can do your own thing. We don't trust you anymore, but hold on to that cash. And it's been really bad. You guys know that Chuba Hubbard's kind of been the dude recently, even coming out of the bye. So that was like a death sentence. And one of my concerns with Miles Sanders is the same one I had with Dameon Pierce before the year. Teams that start a rookie quarterback, they're just bad. So you can project as many opportunities as you want for players like Miles Sanders. And you guys remember the narrative like, oh, we're going to get this guy 50 catches. Well, it really doesn't matter if he's not scoring any touchdowns. Does he have like 1 touchdown on the year? So it's one of those things where Miles Sanders, before the season, he was another top 15 dynasty running back. And I would say right now, there's no way you could trade for him. And I feel like you might get a second, maybe, if somebody, but like you're not getting anything better than that.
No, you wouldn't. And so I wouldn't trade him. I would hold on to him. This is a player that what I have experienced is I believe that this is the groin issue. I still do. He dealt with it all. He dealt with it all training camp, all practice. Came out in the beginning of the year, was kind of projected to be like what we thought. 24 opportunities, 19, 18, 16 opportunities, and was pretty good in at least half of those games. Still not a great offense, but then he re-aggravated the groin, played fewer snaps, fully injured the groin, got out, and hasn't gotten back. I mean, the last 2 weeks, 18% of snaps, 25% of snaps. He should not be active right now for this team. And I really do believe it's the groin issue. If it doesn't recover and change to more of a 50-50 or going back in Miles Sanders' direction, I will be surprised by the end of the year. An
aggravated groin is something that no one wants. And I feel like it's going to be one of your big offseason projects, Betz, for the UDK. Is I know we have the site, but I feel like there's a whole section in the app that could just be dedicated to aggravated groins.
I'll see what I can do. He also missed a game with a shoulder injury too, so he's been kind of banged up for a couple, like a month now, basically, for different injuries. It's interesting because when they came out after the bye week, I think it was, and talked about, or when Frank Reich talked, he kind of said like, yeah, we're going to put Chuba as the lead back. If you think that, do you think Miles Sanders is worth poking around as a buy low right now? If you think it goes back to him being the leader in the backfield?
Yeah, I mean, I would offer a third rounder or something for him. If managers are thinking he's just done, he's not even getting snaps. He's playing behind Chuba has been awful. If I could get him for nothing, I would. I'm not going to pay up right now because I could be wrong about the groin. But if the groin is right, then there's an avenue to make all of it make sense, and that's worth a third round pick to me.
Jason,
right.
You have some players that we're going to pour one out for.
Yeah, we're going to pour one out. It's on one hand, it's low-hanging fruit because these players, they're not going to be – they disappeared. They disappeared because they got injured. But I am taking this as a dynasty question, and I want to point out to the Foot Clan listening, what happens to running backs when they get injured? If T. Higgins got injured, season ender, he's still got a great career ahead of himself. But J.K. Dobbins at 24.9 years old, his career's over. Like it just is. Cam Akers at 24 years old, he tore his Achilles. His career is over. Like these guys will never be in a fantasy lineup ever again. And you even have guys like Nick Chubb, who is all-world, great running back. Now he's requiring a second surgery. He's 28 years old. I don't necessarily think that his career is over. Like a team will bring him on to try, and maybe he heals well because he obviously did once, and he's a superhuman. So maybe he gets another chance and is okay and is in a starting lineup. But what happens when these promising but not delivering running backs gets injured is that they just don't get another chance. It happens all the time in Dynasty. It's just the team's going to move on from them. They're going to be free agents. They're going to go on the open market. They're either going to take like a veteran minimum, which means they're just going to be a fourth stringer in a platoon trying to get that third stringer job, or they're not going to accept the veteran minimum because they think they're worth more, and they're not going to get a deal, and the team's just going to go out and draft 12 new rookie running backs and sign them undrafted rookie running backs. That's what happens every year. So these guys, man, they just disappear. Running backs, when you can get something for them and cash them into wide receivers, it's just safer.
The sad tale of this year for me is Nick Chubb in a dynasty league having an offer put in front of me the night before he gets injured. And I said, I'm going to wait one more day. I'm going to wait after this.
Oh, man.
So
rough. What was the offer?
It was a first and a second.
Well,
wait, so
sorry.
You did the trade?
No, I still have Nick Chubb, and I am just looking at him on my bench.
Did you make him the offer the next day?
Yeah. I tried.
Hey man, you can keep the second.
I'll take that deal.
So it's tough, and it's tough for players that I think we would all say, like, physically speaking, they're awesome. Like, they're just awesome. All three of these players you mentioned, Dobbins, Akers, Chubb, it wouldn't shock anybody, that they would have had a double-digit touchdown season, been awesome, but they're done. One more category here. It's the Old Man Strength Award, and this one's presented by Gary Barnage, Maximum Barnage, another nickname, because he came out of nowhere as a 30-year-old and became like the tight end 3 that year. So this is a veteran who's surprised and has become a dynasty stalwart this season. You two have the primary answers here. Like these are the ones that have made this year. So I'm going to start us off because I think this player, it shocked me how well he's been doing. It's Courtland Sutton. Because we came into the year saying, I don't know if we want any part of this offense. And if we do, it's Jerry Jeudy. Guys, Jerry Jeudy is not it. And Courtland Sutton has been the clear one on this team. He has 9+ fantasy points in all but one game this year. Okay? Here's the other wide receivers to do that this year. A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, and Courtland Sutton. That's the group. So it's been pretty touchdown heavy, but it's been nice to see a player that we thought like, oh man, last year it didn't happen for us. He's done. I think he's been a flex-worthy player that I thought was just dust at age 28. But Courtland Sutton's kind of a nice surprise.
He's been a nice surprise, but man, he's been lucky. I mean, he's just so lucky. I'm looking through his game logs.
It's touchdowns.
It's like, okay, this last week he had 9.9 fantasy points. That's good. He was 2 for 29. His total line in the game was 2 for 29. He just happened to get a touchdown. You know, he's had games of 3 receptions, 1 reception, 2 receptions. It's like, it's hard to rely on that. But you're right. I mean, the stats you pointed out are not a lie. But instead of taking the running back or the wide receiver 31, which is Cortland Sutton, I'm going to take what is one of the best running backs in all of, not just for old men, but in all of fantasy football this year at the ripe young age of 31.5, the running back 2 on the season, Raheem Mostert. Raheem has been awesome. It's very difficult to stop him. He's a big-bodied back with speed in a great system, a really solid offense. He has been outside of a running back 2 only twice this entire season, and he has been inside of the top 3 at the running back position on 3 different occasions with monstrous week-winning performances like 32.7 fantasy points in week 6 or 41.7 in week 3. He has been a safety valve for teams, a high upside play for teams, and his value feels like it is just injury risk alone. He's the running back 1 for this team. Who's the running back 2? Probably Devon Achane soon. More than Jeff Wilson, more than Salvon Ahmed. But no matter who is healthy and available and how many people are rotated in, it seems like it's going to be Raheem Mostert with as the primary ball carrier, and this isn't a guy who needs a crazy amount of carries. I just talked about how good this season has been. He's got games this season with 7 carries, 10 carries, 9 carries, 12 carries. These aren't extraordinary numbers. These aren't numbers where he's getting 25 carries and he's voluming his way. This guy just needs 10 to 12 carries in a game, and he's going to be good, and he's going to get that the rest of the season unless he's injured.
Before this season, all right, so Raheem Mostert, you could have acquired him for a third. Like you could have gotten him for literally nothing.
Oh, yeah, 31.5-year-old running back with injury history for sure.
And Betz, your pick, you could have gotten for free. Like, you could have given him to me. I probably would have said no.
Bag of chips? Sure, I'll take Adam Thielen. Yeah, man, crazy. It's just crazy. 33 years old. Currently the wide receiver 9 in points per game and overall in fantasy, and 11th among all players in targets per game. He's just getting so much volume and PPRing his way, that sounded awkward, to fantasy relevance. And like, I know we wanted Jonathan Mingo to be a thing in Dynasty, maybe, but just doesn't seem likely. The volume should be there for a team that's going to be losing a ton. So it's crazy. I wanted to fade him all off season. I don't have him anywhere, whether it's Dynasty, best ball, whatever. Adam Thielen, man, it's just been crazy.
All right, if you're a contender and you need another spot at wide receiver, what would you give up for him?
Probably a second.
I think that's fair.
You definitely can't give up first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is fair. I think that's fair for both sides. If I could get a second for Adam Thielen and I'm not in the title hunt, it's like, how long is it going to last? How old will he be able to play, get some youth to my team? I'd be fine with that. And sometimes if it costs me a second to go win a championship this year, I'll give it up. I mean, who cares? Once you get the championship, it's yours forever.
Yeah, and just for context, people, this past week, Jason got his butt handed to him in Dino Jr., thanks to my dig stack. So I've got some seconds out there.
No.
To
Not
upgrade.
thanks to your dig stack. Thanks to Gabe Davis goosing while I left Kareem Hunt on the bench. I was like, which one? Back and forth, back and forth. If we just make the other decision, you could keep your dig stack. You still lose.
Yeah.
That's all right. We've faced each other in the championship before, so
many
maybe we'll do
times.
that again. Many times. Well, so then how many titles do you have?
I have one.
Against me?
You were trash that year, man. You didn't even make it.
Right. But I've got 1. No, I've got 2. No, I've got 3 in a row. You can't talk trash to the champ. Get out of here, you nonsense.
I will be...
I beat him in week 9 when he got the championship in week 17.
I will be fuming if Jason... Well, the thing is that they're on a course to be there again. I hate it.
Oh, yeah, we are, baby.
I
Our
hate
team
it.
is so good, and we are
The team with all the olds?
Yeah,
we are
old.
so old. It is unbelievable.
Do you have Mostert and Thielen?
Oh, we've got Mostert. We've got Kelsey. We've got Derrick Henry.
Evans.
We've got Mike Evans, Devontae Adams. We are. I mean, those are all good players. We can win a championship here, but
they are old.
They are, and usually I've talked about this on the show before. Like in general, I would have used these players over the last 2 years to retool while they're superstars and have projected a couple more years left. Trade them for a young stud, unproven player plus a 1. That's like my favorite thing to do, but we couldn't do it because we've been winning championships, and we just got to ride this thing into the ground because if we can get 4, we're getting 4 in a row, baby.
I'm on Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs' back, just saying, carry me. Just take me as far as you can, or I will die. So one more segment.
Take it or leave it.
We're going to give a parting thought here, a second half Dynasty hot take as we move into Week 10. Betz, start us off.
I'm going to say Brandon Ayuk finishes the rest of the season as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. And that sounds crazy because it's a CMC show in San Francisco. And we know Debo will come back and George Kittle will pop up for 3 or 4 spike weeks across that sample. But man, I love our schedule adjusted metrics and the tool on the site for Foot Clan members. San Francisco's schedule is just unreal for wide receivers coming up. They have the easiest schedule remaining from week 10 this week until week 17. And Ayuk has been really good in the first half of the year. So I'm going to say Ayuk, top 10 fantasy wide receiver, rest of the season.
All right, Jason, you're up.
I'm going to say that next year in startup drafts, when you are drafting the always desired second-year wide receivers, we know the big 4. You got Puka, Addison, Flowers, and JSN in whatever order you want. Those guys will be highly drafted, hot commodities. I think the 5th, the next wide receiver up after those 4 guys, is going to be Michael Wilson by the end of the year, the Arizona Cardinals rookie wide receiver who was injured this last week. The Cardinals getting Kyler back, having a bad defense, and what projects to be able to be a solid offense. They're getting James Conner back, so they'll have Conner, they'll have Hollywood, Rondale, and Michael Wilson. With Kyler at the helm, you should be able to put up a lot of points. And if Michael Wilson can show what he showed in training camp with a quarterback that can actually get him the ball, this could be more of a Hollywood Michael Wilson thing, and the other guys kind of fade away as the passing volume comes because the Cardinals are going to have to air it out. So I think the second half of this year, Michael Wilson's going to be very valuable.
All right, the second half this year, I'm calling it Dalton Kincaid is the tight end 1 in PPR leagues the rest of the season. So better than Travis Kelce, better than Mark Andrews. I think it wouldn't be crazy to say that he gets as many receptions as them because the way he's been used recently and rest of season schedule, if you want to look in our Foot Clan tools, he's top 5 in schedule adjusted and points allowed for tight end position. And he's the wide receiver 2 on this team. Sorry, ahead of Gabe Davis rest of the season. So I would love it in a couple of leagues if Dalton Kincaid came through for me, but I think he's going to be the hotness. I think he's going to just be locked in PPR. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty podcast. Make sure you check out everything at jointhefoot.com, and you can join our Foot Clan leagues, be a part of it. We'll see you again next week on The Dynasty Show. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.
Here you are. Here you are.
Critics are calling The Killer a top-grade, heart-racing thriller. It's a terrific, anxiety-inducing, and daring movie that hits the mark.
This is what it takes.
You won't be able to tear your eyes from the screen.
Please, consider yourself lucky if our paths never cross.
Don't miss Michael Fassbender as The Killer. Rated R. Under 17. Not admitted without parent. In select theaters October. Streaming on Netflix November 10th.